Good afternoon, 8th grade geography students. We are going to look today at Western Africa. It's Friday, aren't you glad? We have about, I think it's 5 weeks of school left from today, and that means that we have probably 3-ish weeks left of class. Then we'll have some review time, and then the last week of school will be exams. So we are in the middle of chapter 20. So glad that we got to meet with Mrs. Eke yesterday and hear her story about Nigeria. And today we're going to talk about Nigeria. We're also hopefully going to get into two other countries in Western Africa as well. We're going to talk about Benin and we're going to talk about Togo. Next week, the plan is that Golda's parents are going to come talk to us about Togo, but I don't have a date set for that yet. So keep watching the schedule, and I will let you know as soon as I know, as soon as we've got all those details worked out, because that's a coordinated effort. As soon as I know, I will let you know so that we can all plan to meet together. It was great to see some of you yesterday at that meeting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Western Africa. Here we go. All right, so there's 13 countries in this section we're going to talk about. Don't you like the look of the roads there? I think that would be a pretty odd place to learn how to drive. Not all, of course, all of the roads are paved there, and you can see that they have quite a bit of potholes and stuff in them as well. Most of this region, most of the people in the northern part of this region are of the Muslim faith, and then people in the southern regions are Christians and animists. And animist, of course, we've already talked about that is a person who believes that everything has a spirit. Okay? The rocks do, the trees, the leaves, the grass, everything has a spirit. And okay, so here is our map of Western Africa. Lots of different little countries in here, and this place is where it gets so confusing. So please remember to be practicing your map on the Cetera website. Start up at the top left corner with Senegal and work our way over to Nigeria, but we are going to actually start on the right this time and work our way left, okay? So we're going to start over here with Nigeria, and I do not have a pointer, so I'm going to escape out of this so I can use my pointer here a minute. I want you to notice something about the Nigerian, the way it's laid out, because this is going to be significant in our discussion of it in just a few minutes. Notice that the Niger River comes down here and meets up with this river, which is the Benue River, and they join here in the middle and go to the coast as the Niger River. Okay, so it divides the country into a northern region up here, and then a southwest and a southeast. So it basically divides it in half and then in quarters for the bottom section. That's really significant because there's 3 different groups of people who live in Nigeria, and we need and they will play a significant part in what we're going to be talking about here in the next few minutes. Okay. All right. So the next thing I wanted you to make sure you noted was this page of statistics. And this is really interesting. If you look over at the far right column at the lifespan, these lifespans are very short. The longest one is in Cape Verde, which is basically almost an island country. 71, and even that is shorter than your typical American lifespan. The shortest one is Guinea-Bissau with 49 and a half years. That's not old. That is not old at all, but there's a lot of difficulty, there's a lot of disease, and just life is hard in this part of the world, and that contributes a lot to it. If you look at the column next to that, the per capita GDP, that kind of explains some of it as well. Because what you're looking at there is how much money does each person contribute to the economy, and that's not how much they make and take home, but how much do they contribute to the economy each year. And those amounts are so small. So that is also a telling thing that poverty is a big problem here in Western Africa. Okay, so the area we're going to be looking at first is called the Guinea Coast because it's right on the Gulf of Guinea, that bend in Africa from where it's narrower to get to where it gets wider. That is the Gulf of Guinea. It has been called many different names for a long time over the course of history. The Slave Coast, part of it's been called the Ivory Coast, as well as the Gold Coast, and obviously for different reasons because of what Europeans or others got out of Africa at that time. But it was many slave ships operated in this area in the bays that they have, and these bays are called bites. And I know it's spelled different than bites, which is what you do to your food. But this bite is a bay that's curved, kind of like a C shape. And it could be very severe or just mildly curved. But that is what a bite is. Okay, let me turn my page. The Bight of Benin extends north from the Gulf of Guinea into the coast of three different nations. Those are the three we're going to look at today: Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. Okay, so we're going to look first at Nigeria. And as Mrs. Eke told us yesterday, Nigeria is an English-speaking colony, or it was an English-speaking colony. Now it's an English-speaking country. And English is the official language here. They received their independence from the British in 1960. Oh, let me go back to that so you have that. I know you can get these notes off of our Google Classroom as well. Okay, north of the Niger and Benue rivers rise the plateaus of the Sahel. So that's that big northern region that I showed you on the map. And up here, the dominant tribe is the Hausa. This is one of the three large ethnic groups of Nigeria, and each one is in a different section. But the Hausa are in the northern part. The majority of the Hausa, let me go back to them. The majority of the Hausa are Muslim. 45% of the national population here. Christians in this region of the northern part of Nigeria do tend to suffer persecution because of the dominant Muslim population. Most of the people here live in a rural area. They do not live in cities. They are very traditional. They live on the savannas, which are wide open plains. The crops that are important up here are millet, which is a type of grain, and peanuts. In the southwest area, the Yoruba tribe is dominant. This is where the capital is. The capital is at Lagos. It is the most populated region of the country. Oh, let me go back. This is the most populated region of the country. It was this. Oh, that's on the next slide. Hold on. They also have the most resources. Benin City is in this region as well, and it is the former capital of the Benin Kingdom, which was one of Africa's great kingdoms. It was in existence from the 13th through the 18th century, so probably right around 500, almost 600 years, that kingdom existed in this western part of Africa. But unfortunately, this kingdom made a good portion of its income off of the slave trade. So when the slave trade dried up, they no longer had a way to exist, and the kingdom itself ceased to exist. Today, their most important resource is petroleum off of the coast of Nigeria here near Benin City. The other quarter, the southeastern quarter, is named the Biafra because there it is in the Bight of Biafra. Remember that Bight is that C shape, that curved bay. And they had a war there in 1967 because of the Igbo people fighting for their independence. And the Igbo people are the people who live in this southeastern quarter. So the northern region is the Hausa, the southwestern region is the Yoruba, and the southeastern region is the Igbo. In this southeastern region, I don't want to go on to Benin yet. In this southeastern region, where the Igbo tribe is, they raise things like, it's a lot of lowlands. So there's not a whole lot of good farmable land in this region, but they are able to raise yams, sweet potatoes. They do quite a bit of that. They also harvest palm oil, hardwood, and rubber. Okay, let's go on to Benin. Benin has, it was once part of French West Africa, which we've talked about when we talked about Central Africa. So we aren't going to go back through that again. Benin has about 36% of their people that practice a religion, a form of animism known as voodoo. And most of us are pretty familiar with that. We've seen pieces of that on TV in one show or another. And, so I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the idea of voodoo. It is not a good thing to practice, and I would not encourage you to do any research in that area. It has some elements of spiritism and Satanism in it, so please stay away from it. It's very scary stuff. But about 36% of the people practice voodoo, and another 24% are Muslim. So Christians have really had a hard time taking root in Benin, and they struggle. Okay, they actually had a little bit of a time for about almost 20 years. They had communism controlling most of the country of Benin. But in 1991, they have successfully transferred from a dictatorship to a democracy, which is absolutely wonderful. And they're working on taking great strides in building a stable government. The last country, though, that I want to look at, I got 2.5 minutes left, is Togo. Isn't that little boy sweet? Togo was a colony under Denmark and Germany. And at that point, it was known as Togoland, and they received their independence in 1960. They were freed from Germany after World War I and given to Britain and France to control, and Britain and France gave them their freedom in 1960. They had one guy seized power. His name was Eyadema. He seized power in 1963, and he ruled until 2005. And in 2005, his son took over. So the people of Togo have still been under a dictatorship, but they are now attempting to transition from that dictatorship into a democracy. 45% of the people here do identify with some form of Christianity. Oh, that's all I wanted to do. There are a lot of crops in Togo. There's yams, maize, cassava, vegetables, sorghum, coffee, cacao, and millet. They also raise livestock. The country, has a great deal of arable land. 46% of the land is capable of growing crops. So, and they do now have religious freedom. In fact, they've gotten to the point that they can send out missionaries to other countries as well. So that is Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. And we will pick up next week with the rest of Western Africa. I hope you all have a great weekend.